There we go. We just finished formatting in chapter 3. So now it's officially on the record that when you turn in programs, your decimal places will be formatted to, let's say, 3, unless it's money, then you clearly want it to be 2 decimal places for cents. But otherwise, always format to 3 unless otherwise specified. So I wanted to get that officially on the record. Everybody's here and listening and watching, except somebody left already. Internet must be kicking in and out. All right, other questions? Anything about chapter 3? Our next test on chapters 3 and 4, I have listed as Monday, March 22nd, which seems like it's so far away, but we're going to start chapter 4. We go on break. We come back, we'll finish chapter 4, and then, we'll go from there. But let's start with today, not get too far ahead of ourselves. And I'm going to take a look at chapter 4, which is loops and files. Do, 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 do. Dramatic music. Cue the dramatic music. Okay, loops and files. The first thing we need to cover as we go into loop is another set of operators. I keep saying operators. We started with the very first one was the assignment operator. Then we did add, subtract, multiply, divide, modulus. We talked how divide works several different ways. Then we had our relational operators. Then we had our logical operators. So we have all of these operators that we've been using up to this point. And today we're going to add 2 more. We're going to add the increment and the decrement operator. Well, the reason we're going to use these is we need this little shortcut because it's going to help us in the long run. If I want to take a statement, num equals num plus 1, I can simplify it to this, num plus plus. So my increment operator that I'm talking about is plus plus. There's also a decrement operator. If I ever wanted to subtract 1, I could shortcut it with num minus minus. The one we use the most is the num plus plus, and you'll find you'll probably use that about 100 times now between now and the end of the course. The increment operator, this first one, can be written 2 different ways. It can be written as a pre-increment operator where I put it before the x, or it can be written as a post-increment operator where I put it after the x. So in order to understand the pre and the post a little bit better, I have an example, x equals 6, y equals 7. After this line executes, what will be the values of x and what will be the value of y? And then we're going to look at the second one. After these 3 lines are executed, what will be the value for x and what will be the value for y? So if I take a look at this one on the left, the post where I increment, I have x plus plus. After these 3 lines are executed, what do you think x will be? Don't say 9.
7.
I hear a 7. What do you think y would be?
6.
I hear 6. Okay. Over here, what do you think x will be?
7.
7. What do you think y will be?
Also 7.
7. Okay, Jacob answered those. Anybody want to change Jacob's answers? Going once. Going twice. I guess nobody wants to change them. Could be because the code listings weren't due on time and nobody had to do any of this. Well, let's see. Here's how this works. We'll find out if he's right or
I
not.
don't think we did this in the code listings.
You didn't, but you read the book, right? No. Yeah, just stay muted, Anthony.
No, I just did the
Yeah,
code
just
listings.
stay muted. So right now, x is 6, y is 7. So one of the things that I can do, and sometimes I do this by hand, sometimes I use system.out.println, is to see what values are at certain points. So right now, x is 6. I come down, y is 7. Then I come down to this line and I come across, the very first thing that happens is y gets the value of x. So now y gets the value of 6. Now x gets incremented and x becomes 7. So this post says increment this after I use it. So I'm using it, I'm giving y the value of x, then I'm incrementing it. Let's see what happens over here. X gets a value of 6, y gets a value of 7. I come in, the first thing I do is increment x, so it becomes 7. Then I assign it to y, that becomes 7. Jacob, were
Wait,
those
so
the,
the same thing happens to each of them?
well, except look at the difference. This is 7 and 6. This is 7 and 7.
Okay, but from what I saw, both times you first, I know, I see, you set y to x, then increment x. And with
Bingo.
this one, you set increment x and then set y to x.
You gotcha.
That would produce the same result, though.
No, because here x was 6. So 6 went over to y first, then x got updated to 7. So I have two different results there. Now,
As
like I said,
opposed, so what does the second one do?
the second one increments x first. So it went from 6. All right, let me give you some new numbers. Do. What if this was 5 and this was 8? Let's do that so that we don't get them mixed up. If I come down here,
Okay.
what happens first? So right now, x is 5, y is 8. X is 5, y is 8. Y gets the value of x. So what's y become?
5.
5. X gets incremented. X now becomes 6. If I come over here, x is 5, y is 8. First thing I do is increment x, so it becomes 6. Then I assign it to y. That becomes 6. Okay, as I said, this one right here, that number.
Okay, so what? Okay, so I see. Y is set to the 5 of x, and then x gets incremented. Whereas with the other one, y is incremented and then set to x, or
No, x is incremented and then
and then
assigned
set
to
to
y.
y,
Right, right. He got it.
as opposed to the assignment happening first
Right,
and then incrementing.
right.
Okay, now I understand.
Good.
Before or
Could
after
you
increment.
could you use parentheses could you use a post increment with parentheses to make the order of operations work the way you want it to?
Sure.
Like if it was y equals parentheses x plus plus n parentheses, would that produce the result?
Yep.
Okay.
Okay. So the next thing, section 4.2, we're going to get into something where up to this point, we've written programs sequentially. Line 1, line 2, line 3, line 4, line 5, line 6, line 7. Then in the last chapter, we changed it up a little bit and we had a decision. We had an if statement, which would possibly allow me to skip lines. Now in chapter 3, we're going to do something called looping, which is going to allow us to repeat lines so that I can do something over and over and over. Well, we're going to take a look at 3 different types of loops, the way they're laid out. Okay. The first loop is this guy right here. This is
Yeah, bud.
what? Yamum.
Oh, I'm unmuted. Sorry, my cat was yelling at me.
Oh, is your cat Jamaican?
Sure.
Yaman. All right. Anyhow, the first type of is looking at this flow chart. I'm going to start counter out as 1. Well, this counter you see a couple of times in here. This is something called my loop control variable. It's the variable that controls the loop. That's like the greatest common factor. It's the factors that are common, and we want the greatest one. Sort of like we go backwards. It's the variable that controls the loop control variable. Now, in order to have it, I have to give it a starting value. And as you see in this first flow chart, I have counter CTR getting the value of 1. Now I'm going to come in and I'm going to say, is counter less than 11? And you're going to tell me true or false. Here we go with our Boolean again. Okay. Is counter less than 11? If it is, then I'm going to come in and do stuff. Then I'm going to increment counter, and I'm going to go back up and hit this line again, which means I'm going to repeat this circular motion, this looping motion, how many times? Counter's 1, then it becomes 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and I'm out.
So 11 times.
Well, 10 times, because that's
10
less
times,
than,
okay.
yeah, that's less
I
than.
think if it started at 0.
I have it starting at 1 up here. Okay, so my loop control variable has a starting value. It has a check, that's going to either help me repeat blocks of code or get out. And then finally, I have some way of incrementing or updating, as we'll see later. Here, I'm just incrementing by 1. So what I came up with is a loop that runs 10 times. Now, this particular layout is one called a pretest. It's before I get into my body here. I come in, and it's possible I might get kicked out of that loop right away. So this fella runs 0 or more times. And the type of loop we're going to use for this is called a while loop. That's the first of 3. Okay. Again, here's my starting value, my check, and my increment. Second type of loop that we're going to talk about on Monday is one where instead of a pretest, I come in and I'm going to do my body at least once. I'm going to have my initial value. I'm going to come in and do a whole bunch of work in this rectangular type box. I have my increment. And now when I come out, I have my check. If it's true, I go back up and do the body again. If it's false, it kicks me out. A post test runs at least once. What I mean by runs at least once, it executes the body of the loop at least once. And you'll see down the road where we're going to use this for maybe menus, where I draw up a menu, display a menu, and the user picks certain numbers to do certain things. Or what we're going to quickly get to is a run again option, where we're going to ask the user right at the last thing in the loop, would you like to run again? If it's yes, we're going to loop back up. If it's no, we're going to keep going, and finish up the program. Okay, so this is the first 2. We'll talk about the third one on Monday, but we're going to start by getting up and running on loops with this while loop. And those of you that did the code listings have a pretty good idea of what's going on with the while loop. All right, so let's see what we have. A while loop, oh, there we go. A while loop, it runs 0 or more times. It's the pretest, as I just mentioned on the page before. We're looking at something like the if statement where I have a Boolean expression in here that's going to evaluate as true or false. And if you continue in ComSci, you'll start to see where this is going to have relational operators in it, logical operators, all kinds of stuff is going to go in here. Okay, but the basic idea is while Boolean expression, I do this body. This was everything in my rectangle. Here's an example, a quickie example. If I want to display in the console 10 times the phrase, hi mom, I'd start counter equals 1. That's my initial value. I have my check while counter is less than 10. I have system.out.println, hi mom, and I have a counter to say add 1. Now, what if I skipped counter plus plus?
It'd run forever, right?
It'd run forever. And that's the term infinite loop. That is a runtime error. You know, we had three basic types of errors. This one is a runtime error. Goes on and on and on and on. Okay, so again, this guy displays mom 10 times. All right, so the first thing I'm going to have you do, I'm going to put you in groups. I'm going to give you like, what do we have? I'm going to give you maybe 5 minutes, and I want you to get this up and running. Now, some of you have code listings, so you'll be able to grab that. Now I'm going to bring you back, and then I'm going to discuss what we're going to do next. So I'm going to pause the recording. Okay, so the next thing I want you to do is I want you to take a look at this problem. Display all of the numbers between 1 and 100 that are divisible by 3 evenly. So you just spent time in the breakout rooms, and hopefully you were working on getting this to display the numbers that are divisible by 3. Another good advantage of the breakout rooms is to be able to finish this, and then, as I mentioned earlier, play around with some of these numbers. Try some different things. Be chatty about code listings or something. Don't waste that time. I go into some of these rooms and nobody is sharing their screen and everybody's quiet. And what happens to those rooms? They get sent to other rooms. Get out of there. You're not doing anybody any good. You're in there to listen and watch, not work on your own. Okay, so here's the solution. Some of you are calling your loop control variable a bunch of different things. I've been doing this a long time. I just call it CTR, which is short for counter, because it's counting through my loop. Okay, I don't want to mix it up with other stuff. Counter is 1, while counter is less than 101. If counter mod 3 equals 0, I'm doing a printout of that counter, and then I increment it. So this only prints the ones out that are divisible by 3. Quick note on this guy, it runs 100 times. 100, I put my little pinky in my mouth, okay? Austin Powers, 100 times. Well, slowly now, we're going to start to think outside of the box. Here we go. And I noticed the one group did just this. What I want is to print out the numbers 3, 6, 9, 12. And when I gave you the description of what I asked you to do, it was followed literally by most of the groups, if not all the groups, right away. Okay, go from 1 to 100, print out all the numbers divisible by 3. But the solution could be achieved another way. I'm going to start counter at 1. I'm going to go counter less than 34, and I'm going to print out counter times 3. So when counters 1, it prints out 3. Counters 2, it prints out 6, 9, 12. And I get the same desired result. Okay, I can choose it. Okay.
So how did you know to start it at 34? Where did you get that number?
Okay, if I go 99, 33 times 3 is 99. Remember, I'm going to get the numbers 3, 6, all the way up to 99. So 33 times 3 would give me that last number.
Oh, I see. Okay.
I'm a tricky one, aren't I?
Yeah.
How many times did this first loop run? 100 times. How many times did this loop run? 33 times. So it's a little more efficient. This one had an if statement. This one doesn't have an if statement. So, if we start talking about efficiency and speed and so on, this one might be a better option to get the desired result. I'm not done. Here's another one. What if I say, I'm going to start counter at 3, going to go back to less than 100. I print out counter, and I think this was Jacob's group. It's a little janky, but I'm going to add 3. So it goes 3, 6, 9. The goose drank wine, the monkey chewed tobacco on the street. No, you don't know that song. But I'm just displaying the exact numbers that I want. So 3 different ways using our first type of loop, which is called a while loop, to repeat a block of code a certain number of times.